So this is one of the wheels casters off the safe that I'm working on, and I'm getting ready to try to braze this back together. But before I do, I need to take the wheel out of it just to be able to get access to the back side of this. So this has got kind of a rivet-like axle in it. It's got a rivet head on one side, and this side, it looks like what they did was they just heated it up and upset that on there so that it wouldn't come out. It's not fully riveted over, but it's over there enough that it won't come back out that hole. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to take a little cutoff wheel, and we're going to cut this top part off flush with the top here, and then I'm going to take this over to the press and hopefully press that little piece out without putting too much pressure on all this and breaking this any worse than it is. So let's cut that off with the cutoff wheel. So I got about almost halfway through there, and the grinder that I was using just quit working. Don't know why. So Mike Wiggins, if you're watching, that was one of your grinders that you left here. I grabbed it because it had that nice cutoff wheel in it. So don't know what's going on there, but I just grabbed another grinding wheel here. This one hasn't got a cutoff on it, it's just got a grinding disc, but I think we can get it off. Alright, that's down flush now. I think we'll take it over to the press and press it out. So we got this over on the hydraulic press now, and one thing I want you to notice is I took a couple little machinist wedges, and I've got these wedged up underneath between the little bit of a gap between this wheel and this top piece. And my fear is that I don't want to put downward pressure on here and cause me to break this casting in other places, because it's unsupported on this side. So I'm hoping that I'm just kind of shoring this up from the bottom here to give plenty of support to that top part so we don't break it off. And hopefully this is going to come out. Let's see what happens when I put a little pressure on it. I see it moving down. It's real tight though. Yeah, it's going. Alright, I got to a point pressing there where I was getting a lot of resistance, so I just stopped and took it off. And what I ended up doing was I took a hacksaw and just cut the pin off right there, and there was just a little bit left in the wheel, and it was stuck in here. And when I got the pin out and started looking at it, I don't know if you can see this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. If you look right here, you can see where this whole pin is kind of sheared. So it looks like what probably happened is that the safe was dropped, or someone flipped it over onto the wheels, and when they did, all the weight went down on it and kind of sheared it. So because that pin was out of alignment, when it got to that shear point going between the wheel and this piece here, it was binding up. So anyway, when I cut it off with the hacksaw, that remedied the problem, and I was able to get it back apart without any problem. So now you can see what we're dealing with here. We got this broken piece. It's all here. So this piece just goes in right here, And this is a good candidate, I think, for brazing. Again, where the brake's at, you got both sides of it is attached to the bottom of the safe. So the stresses on it are such that, you know, you'd have to bend it like that really to break it off again. And with it being secured, I think we're going to be okay. So we're going to try to get this brazed back together. So for brazing cast iron, and number one, I like brazing cast iron. You know, if you have access to a TIG welder and can TIG, you can use a nickel rod or something, that's great. I don't have access to a TIG welder. You can stick weld with nickel rods, and I have done that before, but I have found it to be very cumbersome. A lot of preheating, everything's got to be just right for that to work. And brazing is pretty simple and straightforward. And anyway, that's just my preferred way of repairing cast iron. So what we're going to do is we're going to first off take some time. We're going to clean these castings up really well. One of the most important things when prepping a part for brazing is it has to be absolutely clean. And then I'm going to come in here and we're going to V out a lot of this area in here between the brake. And I don't want to V it out. I want to leave a little bit of cast iron in here for it to register on, so that when we put this part back together, that broken piece will give me a very good indication as to where it originally fit. It's almost like a natural jigsaw puzzle that will allow it to fit back together. But at the same time, I want to V out a good bit of that metal for my brazing, or my braze rod to flow into, to get a good bond between the two pieces. So we're going to go over to the wire wheel on the grinder, and then probably just use the grinder to V this out. If I got some places I can't get into, I might grab my die grinder and get in there. But this is all something I think I can pretty much V it out on the grinder itself. So we'll get that done and we'll start brazing. So I've got this mostly V'd out now. I've still got a little bit I'm gonna have to get in there with a die grinder. But you can see, you know, we've got a good area cut out, everything cleaned up real good in there where this is going to braze back together, and it's still registering together pretty well. I do have some areas in here I'm going to have to get with a die grinder because I just can't get it on the big wheel over there. One thing I do want to notice or point out though is as I was cleaning this up, I noticed there was a little crack right here across the top, and you can see a little crack that runs down about right here on this casting. So we're going to also V that out with the die grinder. But anytime you have a piece of cast iron that has a partial break in it such as this, what is always a good practice to do is try to find the end of that break and drill a little small hole there. And what that does is that just stops that break from breaking any further. So we're going to get this over on the drill press. We're going to just punch a little small hole in there, and when we're brazing it up, we'll just fill it in with the braze. But that right there, basically, you find the end of your crack and then you drill a hole, and again, that just removes that stress from right there where that crack is at, or ends at, and it will a lot of times prevent it from cracking any further. So we're going to go knock that out on the drill press and then get the angle grinder and grind out some V's in there where I can repair that crack. Alright, so I've got it out in the light. We cleaned it up. It looks like the crack goes down to about right here. I took a blue Sharpie pen and just kind of marked that so you guys could see it a little bit better. And where that little glob right there is, that's kind of what I'm calling the end of it. And that's where we're going to drill the hole. So just got a little small drill bit in here. Raise the table up a little bit. I've got this all clamped together now, and it's just fits in there perfectly, guys. I took a little C-clamp, and I'm just going to hold that on there until I can get this tacked together, and then we'll start brazing it up. So I'm going to go ahead now, and first thing first, we're going to just do some preheating, get some heat in this part. That's half your challenge with brazing, is just getting everything hot enough before you start trying to actually make the bronze stick. So we're just going to sit here and take our time, slowly heat this part up. Getting into a big hurry while brazing is a surefire way to mess things up. So we're just going to take our time, get some heat in here, and go from there. So let's get the torch going. Alright, we've let this cool overnight, and all in all, I'm pretty happy with the brazing job on here. You know, it's a little bit rough right in here. This is where I was trying to build this edge up, and it was just kind of rolling down the sides, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of grinding in there to clean that up a little bit more. But all in all, I'm very happy with how this turns out. It appears to be a very solid repair, and I'm confident that it's going to hold up fine when we put it back onto the safe. So I am going to have to rework the wheel, make a new rivet to go through there, or a new axle, I guess, to go through that. And I think I'm going to do some work on the wheel itself. It's just got some wear in it that I want to take care of. But before I do that, I am going to get my die grinder out, maybe the angle grinder or whatever, and try to clean up just a little bit of this just to make it look a little bit better. This is to be on the inside where this repair is, underneath the safe, so it's not going to be very visible, so I'm not too worried about cleaning this up too much, but I do want to clean this front edge up here a little bit. You know, this repair here, you know, I may just hit the high spots. I'm not too worried about that little bit of raised area there. You know, that's just giving it some strength. I don't want to take too much of that out, but I am, again, just kind of hit the really rough spots on there to clean it up. So you saw my brazing technique that I used working on this, and you know, it's difficult for me to really explain how you do a lot of this. Really, my experience with brazing has been that about the only way to do it is just to get in there and start trying, and you know, it just eventually it just kind of clicks, or at least it did with me. I guess the tips that I would give you is, number one, I mentioned this earlier, make sure you preheat the part really well so you have plenty of heat in there. In order for that braze to stick, you have to have the metal good and hot. It needs to be kind of a cherry red color, but not just right there where you're working. You really got to have heat in the whole part for that to happen. If you just localize one there and just heat up one little tiny part, number one, that causes a lot of stress on the part because you've got a lot of heat in one area but not in the others. It's better to heat the whole part up kind of gradually, a little bit at a time, and then concentrate and get your heat in that area you're going to work in. The other thing is when I'm brazing, I try not to put the torch so much right on the bronze rod. I rather try to focus the heat onto the metal and bring the rod in there close enough to the flame where it just kind of melts and just puddles right in there. If you get that brass puddled up and put the torch right there on it, a lot of times it'll kind of blow that brass out, and you almost fight yourself. So, a lot of times when I'm working on, like, I have this V'd out groove, I'll try to heat just a little bit ahead of where I'm actually wanting the braze to go in and kind of come in behind it. And the braze is going to melt at a much lower temperature than the cast iron is really heated up. So you can kind of just flow it in there and just kind of work toward there. That's how I do it. Some of you guys out there do a lot more of this than I do, and you may have other tips on how to make it work better. But again, for me, it's just something that with practice, you kind of develop what works for you, and I'm trying to pass along some of those tips that work for me. And again, this is my preferred way of dealing with broken cast iron. I have done the TIG before. In the shop I used to work at, we had a TIG welder, and man, that is really sweet, being able to use the TIG torch to heat it up and do your brazing really with the TIG torch. I wish that I had access to one now, because I really enjoyed doing TIG work when I had that. But right now I just don't have the capability to do it, so that's not really an option for me. And the torch is still a very handy tool, something that you can do an awful lot with. So let's get in here and start cleaning this up and see if we can make this look presentable. Alright guys, with a little bit of dressing on this thing, it looks a lot better. Again, I'm not trying to totally blend this in, but I did want to just kind of knock off some of the high spots in there. This side here is not really going to be visible. If you're looking at this outside edge, see this will be visible, this side will be visible, and that front edge will. All this in here, because this sits down flush, I did have to kind of get this down. I couldn't have the braze up higher than the cast iron in here, so I had to grind some of that out, but not a lot. But all in all, I'm very happy with this repair, and I think that's ready to go back on. We just need to get the wheel back installed.